Welcome back. It's Uncle Phil. Is with me is Smooth Andy, my partner in crime, and we're really wrapping up. I can't believe it. It is the day before the first game, the first Thursday night game of the NFL season. It's Andy, you got to be feeling a little bit giddy this time of year, right?
Yep. We wait for this moment. It's almost even though it's Christmas in the sense that it keeps on giving for about what 6 months, well, maybe a little less. It almost feels like the anticipation is even better than the actual games when they come up. So I almost feel like once the games start, I'm like, oh God, I hope they appreciate this because all through August, I'm just like, oh God, how long? And here we are. So we've got college football this weekend that we just saw a lot of good games. Now we're gonna have pro, and we're just gonna be in heaven. So
Well,
yeah.
look, it's the Ravens Chiefs, so it shouldn't disappoint. So we're excited about that. Hey guys,
Yep.
we got a little carried away last time and talked too much. We're going to try to shorten this one down and lock this one in 30 minutes. So hang tight as we move kind of fast. But before we do that, please follow Andy at Smooth Andy Apollo 5. Is that right?
That's Smooth Andy 5. I
Smooth
couldn't do.
Andy 5. Excuse me.
Smooth Andy Apollo was one letter too many for the length of a handle, so
That's
I had to come up.
unfortunate. Anybody who doesn't know, that's a nod to The Simpsons. So, Smooth Andy 5, please follow him there. And I'm at Uncle Phil's Locks on Instagram, X, and on TikTok. Uh, and again, please like and subscribe if you're enjoying these as much as half as much as we are. Please do that. Smooth Andy, we're at the NFC West. Speaking of being nostalgic, this is the end of our podcast. Uh, I think this is one of the hardest divisions for me to handicap this year because I feel like that there's so many things here that could go different ways. Like let's talk about San Francisco. Like San Francisco, will they stay healthy? I mean, this is it feels a little bit like their last ride to me because they just feel like that they're in this window. Every team has windows, and it feels like they're in this window. Will they stay healthy or not? You know, Los Angeles, how much are they going to miss Aaron Donald? I mean, how much do you miss a transformational player, right? You know,
Yeah.
clearly they worked on the offensive line to help out with that last year. Can they get a field goal kicker that can actually make a field goal this year? Last year, that was just a nemesis for them. It just drove McVay nuts, I'm sure, but that was just a horrible experience. And then going down to Seattle, a coach that you and I both are unanimous again that we think is going to make an amazing impact. Guy we cannot wait to see in Mike McDonald and see how he does this year. Just super excited to see how that team turns around. We got Geno Smith that is that has emerged as this, I mean, not elite franchise quarterback, but a franchise quarterback nonetheless. And they just had problems on the defensive line last year, especially stopping the run. And we expect that to be solved this year by Mike McDonald. I mean, Mike McDonald was raved about in the Ravens building, and people inside the building said he was the smartest coach on the entire staff last year. So, really, I mean, hard to not be hyperbolic and say we have great expectations for what he could potentially do. And then let's go to the Arizona Cardinals. You got, a coach last year that you saw an immediate impact on the team last year with Arizona, Jonathan Gannon. Another one of those Philadelphia Eagles assistants that became a head coach along with Shane Steichen that players seemed to really respond to last year. And I've never seen Arizona players, I never seen them play as hard as they played for a coach as they did last year under Jonathan Gannon. Even when Kyler Murray was down, they fought and fought and fought and did just a great job. I felt like that. And so this year we get to see hopefully a healthy Kyler Murray and see what this team can actually do. They've got their first round draft pick. I think everybody's waiting to see what Marvin Harrison can do. And that's as exciting as anything. But that's kind of the overview of the conference. And you know, anything you want to add to that, or what do you think about it?
Yeah, this is Arizona's sort of like Chicago, except without a rookie quarterback. But they have their starter coming back. I don't know if I'm ready to say that Kyler Murray is going to be the cornerstone of that offense for the next 10 years, but I could be wrong. I've seen a lot from him that I really like, and I've seen a lot that I didn't like. And not being able to stay healthy, not really necessarily his fault, is one of them. But I expect this team to be better. I like their coach like you do, although 4-13 season, even without Kyler Murray, jury's still out on him as far as I'm concerned, on Gannon. Just because I think they played hard. I think you're right about that. But 4-13 is not a great not a great record, even if you are playing with Joshua Dobbs as your starting quarterback. Um, so I'll be interested to see how far they can move up now that they have hopefully a healthy Kyler Murray for the year, plus those weapons, including Marvin Harrison Jr. Um, I think Seattle and the Rams are the most interesting two teams, because they're both capable of making the playoffs and they're both capable of missing the playoffs. They're both in that middle, and one of them will probably make the playoffs and one of them probably won't. I think the Niners are a class of division. I don't think you're going to disagree with me on that. Even with the question marks, Trent Williams holding out. Is he still holding out? I'm assuming he is, right?
He's still holding out.
Yeah. So they have some issues, but they kept Ayuk. I think Debo's in his last year, I believe, because they were talking about
I
trading
think
him in
you're
the
right.
offseason as well. So you might be right. This might be their last stand, or maybe
I mean,
pure
Kittle's
solid.
looking older. I mean, Kittle's
Yeah.
looking older. Trent Williams isn't, I mean, he's unbelievable at the level he's playing from, but I mean, as an offensive tackle, he is old. I mean, he's really, it's a tough time. I'm with you on that. So,
Hmm.
but, going back to Cardinals, I mean, they've got a chance to be a surprise team this year, with Kyler
Yep.
Murray healthy, with him healthy and Jonathan Gannon. But, the biggest question to me is that can he remain healthy? I mean, a quarterback of his size or stature, in the NFL is really, really tough to maintain. He takes, you know, I mean, it could be one hit. I mean, it can happen to anybody, but certainly his body has less to absorb than most others. But, fortunately, because of his baseball career, he's a great slider and he can actually get down the field and certainly be elusive in that. But really interesting to see. I think they could be a team that could potentially take a step up. I mean, it's really interesting. There's always a team in the NFL that goes from worst to first every year in their division. And this year we had to choose from the New England Patriots. I don't think we think that's going to happen. We think we have the Tennessee Titans. I don't think that we're ready to call that one yet. You have the Los Angeles Chargers. Could they dismount, the Chiefs? I think that'd be tough. I'm not sure they have the roster yet to do that. You have the Washington Commanders. Not sure that they're ready for that. They're only going to have the offensive line, but again, we talked about the Eagles potentially imploding. We have the Carolina Panthers,
No.
which I don't
Nope.
think that we think that
Nope.
they're ready for that either. They don't have the
Nope.
roster.
Not even.
So we're left with three candidates that will go. One of these candidates will go worst to first. And will that be the Cincinnati Bengals? Seem to be a prime candidate, for me. The Chicago Bears. I'm not sure that they're ready. I guess they could, but not sure that they're ready. They do have a more favorable schedule. And the last one's Arizona Cardinals. Could the Cardinals be that team? I don't know. I'm not ready to go on that limb. I like that their feistiness, but I'm not sure that they will.
Yeah. If I had to choose one of those, I'd say Cincy.
Yep.
If I had to choose second, I'd pick Arizona.
Yep.
I don't see Chicago going. Again, we talked about that when we were talking about them. I don't see them pulling a Houston Texans. I think it's more likely a team that missed their quarterback for the year, and and as opposed to having a rookie who you're not really sure about yet. So
Yep.
I think Kyler has a better chance to turn this around, and Joe Burrow obviously has a really good chance to turn that one around as well. And I wouldn't sleep too much on the Chargers. I mean, the Chiefs we talked about this, I think, when we did the AFC West. The Chiefs tend to kind of treat the regular season as a preseason. You know, they dropped the first game last year at home to Detroit, 31-30, I think it was. It was on Thursday Night Football, the first game of the year.
Yep.
Everybody said, "Oh gosh, are the Chiefs in trouble?" And no, no, they weren't.
No.
They didn't get the home field advantage through the playoffs, and they still won the Super Bowl. So I think to some degree they're vulnerable in that respect. In that I don't think I think they realize they're so good they can kind of bring their B game, and they'll make the playoffs and probably get at least one bye, that kind of thing. So I think that makes them a little bit vulnerable to a team if Jim Harbaugh can come in and just turn that ship around. I'm sorry, we're talking about the wrong division right
Yeah,
now, but
we
yeah,
are on. We have completely gone down a rabbit hole that we shouldn't have gone down. And I
that's
think
all
I
my
led us
fault.
there.
Sorry.
I led us down the rabbit hole and uncovered the man cover, and you just dove right in. So congratulations on that. But let's roll on to Seattle. You know, again, another rabbit hole that you and I frequently go down is talking about Mike McDonald. We talked about that. Talked about um, Geno Smith. Just really disappointing way that at the end of the season feel like they completely sold at the end of the season. They had a chance to keep it going, and they just lost at home versus Pittsburgh, and it was kind of an ugly loss. And so it was time for a change, and love Pete Carroll, but every coach has a shelf life, and last year looked to be like his. So really excited to see what they're going to do this year. Brought in a ton of key people, as well as coaching staff. Two notable people on the coaching staff brought in Ryan Grubb from Washington to uh, uh, he was their offensive coordinator. He'd gone with Kellen DeBoer to Alabama, and they pulled him away from there and made him their offensive coordinator. He was offensive coordinator and quarterback coach for Washington and for the university, not the Commanders. And they also got special teams coordinator in a really sneaky move. They got special teams coordinator Jay Harbaugh. Another Harbaugh has entered in the league, and he is a special teams coordinator. Where, of course, his brother John started as well. Is known as he's the only person in the league that's head coach that's not an offensive or defensive head coach, but a special teams coordinator. So really interesting to see what they do. What are your thoughts on Seattle?
Well, don't forget Mike Tomlin, first of all, who was not a he is a head coach, but he was hired so long ago it's hard to remember. But I think he was a linebacker coach when he got hired, right?
But it's true. But I mean, he's a defensive guy. He's a
Yes.
defensive guy. I guess that's my point. I misspoke, but thanks for
Okay.
the clarity on
Okay.
that. Yep, you're right.
I was just thinking non-coordinator hires,
Yep,
and
yep.
he came to mind. Okay, so Seattle, I like their draft. I was looking at it briefly while you were speaking, and I love drafts where they don't go for all the high-end, flashy pieces. I think flashy
Yep.
piece drafts are the sign of a desperate organization trying to get some excitement. They got defensive tackle, offensive guard, linebacker, tight end, corner guard, corner tackle. That's a trenches draft. That's a secondary draft. I like that. I like that a lot. I think that's a good way to build. I think Seattle's always been pretty smart in the draft. They seem to. I mean, they've made some mistakes, no question, but they seem to be pretty sharp about how they do things, and they're not gonna go reach for that brass ring and try to do the flashy thing. They're gonna build where they need to build, and they're gonna get better. So I expect them to be. I think they will improve this year. I think Mike McDonald, again, we don't know anything yet except that he was very good when he was a defensive coordinator at Baltimore. But I think he's going to make a difference there. It's always good to have a new voice, as good as Pete Carroll was. The fact that he left after last year maybe shows that he was, his heart wasn't in it as much as it had been at one point, that kind of thing. So maybe last year was a little bit of his coasting to his rocking chair, although he's now, I believe, defensive assistant or something somewhere now, right? Isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't he helping out like Southern Cal or somebody? So I expect them to be better than they were. They were 9-8 last year, so I guess I'm saying I think they'll make the playoffs. I really think it's going to come down to when they play the Rams head to head to whichever if one of those teams comes out 2-0 in those matchups, they're going to finish second in the division to me.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that's fair. Look,
those
I mean,
those are going to be big. Yeah.
look, what we love about Seattle is that weapons on the outside, they're just loaded.
Mhm.
And so, they've got an opportunity to be really good. John Schneider is their president of football operations. Pete Carroll got a little bit too much power and kind of like Bill Belichick meddled in the draft in the previous things, and it didn't go as well as it had been previously. So John Snyder's back in full control of that. I think it's in good shape, to your point, and excited about to see where they go because they've got a decent team. But speaking of the team that you mentioned that they're going to be battling out for, that's the Los Angeles Chargers. Los Angeles
Right,
Chargers,
right, right.
really interesting. Potentially the best offensive mind in the game, and Sean McVay. I mean, he's or at least up there, top two or three. You've got some people will argue Shanahan, some people will argue with, of course, Andy Reid, and Andy Reid's got the Super Bowl trophies to hide it. I mean, to prove it and to back it up. So it's hard not to say him, but certainly Sean McVay, as well noted, his photographic memory. He can name you any play that happened even 10 years ago at a certain point in the game. He can tell you exactly what happened, which is just remarkable. I have trouble telling you what I did this morning, but regardless, really interesting to see what they do. Speaking of a team that is getting, even though he's a young, phenomenal offensive coach, he does have a really good quarterback, but he has an older quarterback. And, how many more rides into the sun does Matt Stafford have? Last year was really tough. I mean, on him it showed last year in him being pressured. When he wasn't pressured, had a QBR of 75 and was ranked eighth in the league. But when he was pressured, his QBR dropped all the way to 21, and which was 17th in the league. And this was the fifth largest decline of any quarterback in the NFL. So really interesting deal. That was a big deal for them in the offseason of why McVay went after aggressively offensive lineman. He got guard Kevin Dotson, re-signed him, and then also they got Lions guard Jonah Jackson with a 3-year deal. So and of course they got former Seahawks tight end Kobe Parkinson as well. So look, that's something that they have to do on the offensive line. The defensive line without Aaron Donald there, really tough. It's impossible. Aaron Donald had 111 sacks since 2014, and the next person on the Rams sack leaders that's next is Leonard Floyd, and he's got 29. So, I mean, you're talking about an impossible gap to fill on that. They had a good draft. They've got some really good players in the draft. Well, hopefully those people are going to have to step up. But we'll see. But I mean, again, their draft was rated really high. And Duke, tell me about your thoughts on the Rams.
uh, there's a lot of age on this roster still, even though they've, moved on from some players. It's funny how much change there has been, especially in the secondary on this team. When they won the Super Bowl and they had, God, of course I'm going to have a brain cramp. The kid out of Florida State. They had a solid secondary, and this is a completely new secondary since then, as far as I can tell here. That's a concern. They have Jared Verse, who they took in the first round. Jalen Ramsey, thank you. I just hate myself for brain farting on that.
Yep, no, it happens.
They added Jared Verse to the he's going to play linebacker in the 3-4, so rush linebacker, sort of an LT.
And everything out of camp he's an absolute stud.
Yeah, well, again, grain of salt, but we'll see. So, I just think what you hear during camp is sometimes going to be rose-colored glasses for just about everybody. So we'll have to see how he does.
Well,
but,
I will say that I tend to believe it, and I'll say this because as bad as Florida State looked in their opening game, they're missing somebody. They're missing several somebodies, and it certainly looked like offensive, defensive line all the way across the board. So I'm assuming everybody who went to the NFL or graduated from Florida State last year, was an absolute stud.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's not an unreasonable thing to think. I think it might have also possibly been partially you're playing Georgia Tech, just like Clemson played Duke last year in the first game and thought, we'll be all right. And then nope, they weren't. I think the same thing happened. I think they just kind of came in thinking, hey, we're Florida State, we won the ACC.
Yep.
This is just going to be a tune-up, and Georgia Tech didn't think it was a show; they thought it was a damn fight. So they showed up and they beat them. But um, I do like this team. It's just it's really hard to see. I mean, they went 10-7 last year. It's really hard to see how they're going to get significantly better this year, even with what they added. No
Right.
disrespect to what they added. It's just I don't see a lot of potential for development. Again, Cooper Cup, he's old. They got Tutu Atwell. Of course, Puka Nacua. I mean, what a great rookie year that was. I mean, and out of nowhere, nobody was talking about him until 2 or 3 weeks into the NFL season, and everybody said, "My gosh, what's going on here?" Um, but it's a good team. It's just not great. It's in that 500 range, 8-9, 9-8, 10-7, 7-10. I think, and it's going to be somewhere in there. And again, I think it's between them and the Seahawks to see who takes that second spot in the division and whether they get enough wins by doing that to qualify for a wild card. But I think the Niners are going to win this division again.
I think it's incredibly competitive division. It wouldn't surprise me if there's some upsets in this division along the way. I'm not saying differences in standings, but I'm saying I think this is if you're betting on this divisional game during the season, I think you're taking your life in your own hands because these are teams that know each other well in the division, like all teams do,
Yep.
and in each one of these teams are just absolutely feisty. And I think that's what I love so much about the NFL this year. I feel like the NFL this year is just going to be um, it's going to be very picking and choosing about the games you bet on as always, but even feel like even more so this year. Just feel like there's more parity than ever this year.
Hmm.
Really interesting, interesting league. Uh, and I think the Rams. Would it surprise me if something happened and the Rams, a key injury, the Shanahan has a losing record without Christian McCaffrey. Would it happen if Christian McCaffrey went down or Brock Purdy went down or Trent Williams goes down? I mean, Trent Williams is kind of key to that offense as
Hmm.
well. And one of them go down, and then all of a sudden the Chargers, I mean the not Chargers, the Rams end up finishing on top of that division. Would it surprise me? No. Would it surprise me if Arizona and Seattle are feisty enough where those people come up and the holes are too big to fill for that? And Stafford looks older this year, and they can't stop anybody on defense because Aaron Donald's gone, and nobody's, defense offenses don't have to double team anybody on their defensive line anymore, and they can block everybody, and so.
Yeah.
And other parts of their defense get exposed. The back end of their defense potentially get exposed. So it just I don't think there would be anything about this division that surprised me about that. So to your point, if this team finished if it was a fight between them and Seattle, second and third, wouldn't surprise me, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was a fight between them and any other team in their division. So really
Yeah.
interesting the way it's going to go. But we've said the best consistently rated the best roster in the entire NFL for last, and that's the San Francisco 49ers. And just, before I get into some things, where I read off some things that I thought were important, tell me what you think about this 49ers team.
Well, they're at the enviable position now, where to your point, they have arguably the best roster in the NFL. So what they're trying to do is, as people age out of the roster, they're trying to just backfill with new young talent as they should, and they've done
Yep.
a really good job. I mean, think of all the players who they have on this roster already who are not known to be stars and who turned into stars. I don't even remember where Brandon I played in college anymore, off the top of my head. But they hit that one. Debo Samuel, same thing. He played at South Carolina. I remember him, but
Yep.
I don't think he was expected to be a superstar, and he turned into one. Unfortunately, they lost Ricky Pearsall to a gunshot
Oh,
yesterday or the day before to his
just
chest.
horrendous.
Yeah. Uh, so I'm not sure how long he's going to be out, but that's their first round pick. Um, So that doesn't help when you might have to redshirt your first round pick because of not an injury but a violent crime. Um, they also picked up Renardo Green, corner from Florida State, Dominic Pooney, tackle from Kansas. Some nice names, but again, uh, if ideally if you're San Francisco, these like basically all these guys are going to be backups this year, and then they'll step in after a year or so. In other words, they have such a good roster. I don't think they have any positions of need where they really need somebody to hit right away on their first rounders. They can be rotational players, learn the playbook, learn their teammates, learn how to do what they need to do. I think they're at that stage. They're so good. At some point, age might catch up with them, but my gosh, I mean, 491 points for, 298 against. That's fantastic. Um, I still think they're the team to beat. I think they can slip and finish second or third or something, but I just don't think it will happen unless it's a major injury, like you mentioned, like if Purdy's out. I don't even know who the backup is off the top of my head right now,
Well,
but
Shanahan's proved he
um,
can win even with a backup, but I mean,
yeah,
it's a problem for me. It's Trent Williams or Christian McCaffrey. I mean, those are
yeah,
big. Those are big. Obviously, Debo Samuel's. We know he gets hurt every year and misses 2 or 3 games, but I mean, the guy's so tough that he always bounces back and comes back. It'll be an interesting deal, with San Francisco. Just to kind of, it just seems like when Trent Williams and if Purdy, Trent Williams, Debo, and McCaffrey are healthy, then they are just really unstoppable.
yep,
I feel like that John Lynch has really built a squad there that most people in the league want to try to envy and try to imitate, or that are the envy of the league and want to imitate. Uh, the one thing that I saw as I was running down doing some research on San Francisco is that something that really surprised me is that Shanahan's now 1-30 when trailing by 5 points or more in the fourth quarter. He
huh?
just really fourth quarter is his nemesis. I mean, from a you know going from a gambling perspective, I mean, look, everything's being bet now um, from players to player from player props to, coin toss everything. But I mean, real, gambling things or, if you want to put out a fourth quarter bet, if your side allows you to do that, it's an interesting one to look at from that. The
Let
other
me let me
thing,
interrupt you real quick if you don't mind. Just one thing, because you mentioned John Lynch. This is something that might hurt them. If Adam Peters is as good as everybody thinks he is, and he was the assistant GM, and assistant GM doesn't mean John Lynch makes all the picks and you don't really say anything. It means you've got specific duties. You're going to be out there
Mhm,
identifying talent for the GM. The GM makes the ultimate decision.
mhm.
Yada yada yada. If Adam Peters is as good as everybody thinks he is, it'll be very good for the Washington Commanders. But it opens up a question mark: is John Lynch that good, or did he just hire good people? And who he's backfilling with after losing Adam Peters, are they going to be as good as Adam Peters was? Um, that might be a problem in this draft and the future drafts for them. It's just something to think about because they seem to hit home runs with both their head coach and their GM, but I think they're losing some of their backroom talent as well.
Yeah, good. And I would argue the converse that if you're actually really good at your job, then you hire good people. But we'll
Yeah.
see it. Some people just luck into good people, and when they leave, like a lot of people say, Steichen, and a lot of people don't give Jonathan Gannon enough credit. When he left, he was also the person that left that things fell apart for the Eagles. So
Yep.
another thing from a gambling perspective is that we saw last year is that is that how inaccurate Purdy was because of his small hands against Green Bay, and that's something that when weather is in play with San Francisco, you can actually look at that as potential opportunity to fade San Francisco in that. Bring George Kittle back again. He was the highest graded tight end last year, according to PFF. Really interesting. Again, all these guys kind of feel like they're on the verge, kind of more on the end of their career rather than the prime. San Francisco had a really heartbreaking loss in the Super Bowl to San Francisco, a game that feels like they dominated majority of the game. And then when Dre Greenlaw went out with an Achilles tear, they kind of fell apart. Chiefs just picked that side apart and just wore it out. And their backup to Dre Greenlaw just didn't do a good job. And certainly and to your point, or I think you may have mentioned earlier, they actually fired Steve Wilkes in the offseason, their defensive coordinator, had him replaced. He did Steve Wilkes last year did the opposite of what Steve Spagnuolo did. Steve Spagnuolo, Kansas City gave up a certain amount of points during the season and gave up 10 points less, 10 to 12 points less in the postseason. Steve Wilkes, regular season, gave up 17.5 points a game. In the playoffs, he gave up 25.7. One of the major reasons why he was let go like that. So, again, it'll be interesting to see how things play out this year. It was tough to step up in D'Amico Ryan's shoes. They've got a tough schedule this year. They face 4 teams that are coming off byes this year, the most in the NFL. They face Kansas City coming off a bye, Dallas coming off a bye, Seattle coming off a bye, and Buffalo coming off a bye. So not really that great. And they have a ton of primetime games, just like Kansas City. When you are the best and you have those notoriety games, you get the primetime games, and when you get those, then you get shorter rest a lot of times. Especially if it's on Sunday night or Monday night, and so that factors into it. So it'll be interesting. I think somebody could sneak up on them because of their schedule, because of their age, the potential for injuries. But I'm not ready to call it yet, and I'm not ready to step out on that limb. Smooth Andy, it's time. It's time for you to rack them and stack them. You kind of a little bit did that, but we've already done that. But I want to give you time to change your mind. I want to see if I can create some despair and some potential doubt in your mind that you could potentially shuffle things up. Will you shuffle the deck, or will you stay the same?
Boy, it's so hard to bet against McVay. Or not to bet against McVay, but to expect a step back from a really good coach. So,
Yep.
Injuries being neutral for everybody, which they aren't. But
yep.
I'm going to say I don't think the Cardinals are going to. I think the Cardinals might finish third. And the question is, who drops more, Rams or Seahawks? And I'm going to go with the Seahawks. We don't know yet how good Mike Macdonald is as a head coach. You can be a great coordinator or not a head coach. Spagnuolo being a good example, right? It's really a tough choice. This is such a good division because I think you're right that just about anybody can win it. I really don't think the Cardinals are going to be able to turn it around quite that much. I just don't think that's going to happen. But I do think they're going to be in the mix for that right around 500 group with the Seahawks and Rams. And who comes up second, third, and fourth is anybody's guess. So I'll just make a guess. I'm going to say Niners, Rams, Cardinals, Seahawks.
Okay. No, that's an interesting guess. I think that easily could happen. I'm going to go chalk. I'm going to go like it finished last year. I'm going to go San Francisco, then the Rams, and then I'm going to go Seattle and then Arizona in that. But, it wouldn't surprise me if you shuffled those cards and it came out completely opposite of what I said. Should be an interesting year.
Yeah.
Heck of an NFL season. You and I couldn't be more excited. Smooth Andy, thanks for taking us through this. Thanks for joining me along this path of breaking down each division and all 32 teams, which we did. And I think you and I could probably go down and do it all again. But for listeners' sake, we will come up with new material and do that again. But guys, thanks for the follow. Thanks for sticking with us through this journey. Follow Smooth Andy 5 on X. Follow me, Uncle Bill's Locks, on X, on Instagram, and on TikTok. And please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you enjoyed this and if you've taken the journey with us, or at least jumping on here at the end. We greatly appreciate it. As always, have a great day, and let's roll.